Hey guys, welcome to another top 10 list, and welcome to my top 10 worst superhero movies. A few months ago, I did a list of my top 20 favorite superhero movies. If you guys haven't seen that one yet, if you guys haven't seen that, there's a link in the description below, of my top 20 favorite superhero movies, and so now I'm going to be doing the list of my top 10 worst superhero movies, so... Yeah, some of these movies on this list, I actually just recently saw some of them. And so, yeah, let's get started. And some dishonorable mentions are Green Lantern. Yep, the effects in this movie were awful. And the first act was fine. Like, I liked that war scene, like the aircraft scene where they're flying. That scene was fine, like it was good, but the first act was fine. The second act wasn't that great. The third act was just awful, and just everything. This movie had terrible effects, and just I did not like the story, and just this movie sucked. Suicide Squad. Yep, this is the worst movie in the DC Extended Universe. This movie is awful. The only two thing, yeah, I did like Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn and Will Smith as Deadshot. They were fine, but everything else was just awful. Jared Leto was terrible as the Joker. It had some good scenes, like I liked that part where Batman was where Batman versus the Joker and Harley Quinn. That part was great, but everything else was just awful about this movie. It was terrible, and yeah, definitely one of the worst DC movies. Eternals. I've talked a lot about this movie. I talked a lot about it in my tier ranking of all the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. I found it extremely boring, and I talked a lot about it in my top 10 most boring movies. So if you guys want to go hear more about it, just go check out those videos. Superman 3. Yep, this movie, the first two Superman movies were really good. The first one's one of the best superhero movies. The second one's really great too. This one, not so much. I did not like this one was just, it started to fall apart a bit. This is definitely one of the worst third installments to movies. I did not like this movie at all, and it fell apart. I did not like this movie. And Justice League from 2017. Yep, this movie was just... I remember thinking it was pretty good when it came out. I remember really liking it when it first came out because I remember really liking it. But over the years, this movie's not... It's just forgettable. I forgot all about it until until the Snyder Cut came out, and the Snyder Cut was awesome, and now I think this movie's even worse now that the Snyder Cut is out. And... the effects were awful. The jokes are so cheesy, and this movie is cringy. And it just, I didn't like Steppenwolf in this movie. It was cringy. Never gonna watch it again. The Snyder Cut is awesome. If you guys haven't seen this movie and haven't seen the Snyder Cut, just watch the Snyder Cut and skip this movie. Anyway, let's get started with number 10. At number 10 is The Green Hornet. I actually did not see this movie until just about a few weeks ago. I mean, I saw it when it came out, but years ago. I did not remember anything about it, and I remember rewatching it, and this movie does suck. I don't like Seth Rogen in this movie. He doesn't work as Green Hornet, and it's just, this movie's boring. It doesn't work. It's like, it doesn't feel like a superhero movie. It feels more like a movie like movies where you go, like a bar movie with a bunch of drinking, and it doesn't work. There's not a lot of action. I mean, I did like that chase scene on the road. That scene was good and had some good fight scenes, but everything about this movie was just boring. Didn't like it. At number 9 is Supergirl. I I remember I liked some parts in this movie. Like every time Supergirl was on screen, it kind of redeemed the movie a bit. But everything else, though, it's just she's barely even in this movie. This movie's just it's just boring. I don't like the story. It's just Supergirl's barely in it, and you never even they keep on saying that Clark Kent is Supergirl's cousin, but they never even show him at all. And it's supposed to be like in the same universe as the four other Superman movies. It's just, I don't know, this movie sucks. One of the worst DC movies. At number 8 is Ghost Rider: Spirit of Vengeance. I remember I saw the first Ghost Rider, and the first one wasn't even so good. The first one wasn't so good, but it was more tolerable than this one. Like, it was watchable. This one was just awful. Like, the narration in the movie, it's so cheesy, and it's awful. Like, the effects were pretty bad. And the story sucks. And I remember, I was at my grandparents' house. I had to go do a chore, and honestly, doing those chores was much better than watching this. This movie was just awful. This was the real chore to sit through. This movie was awful. And it has Nicolas Cage in it, and I've said before, I love Nicolas Cage, but he's also been in some really bad movies, but he's also been in really good movies, and so, yeah. Anyway, Ghost Rider: Spirit of Vengeance. That movie sucks, and the first one wasn't even that good anyway, so, yeah. At number 7 is Morbius. Thankfully, I did not see this movie last year when it came out in theaters. I watched it when it came out on Netflix, and one of my friends really wanted to see this movie, but I kind of told him a white lie that I went and saw it because I didn't want to pay money to see this movie. And I didn't pay money to see this movie, and I didn't pay money to see this movie, thankfully, and I really didn't want to pay money, and I didn't because it got crappy reviews. And I didn't waste my time watching this movie. And so, yep, didn't see this movie in theaters. I watched it, actually, funny enough, I actually watched it literally 1 year later as it came out. I watched it on April Fool's Day, so I could say to people that I thought it was one of the greatest movies of all time because it was April Fool's Day. I saw it literally 1 year later after it came out. Literally, actually, it was kind of wild, actually. I saw it about 2 weeks ago, and so... yeah, Morbius was just awful, and it was just awful. Like, it was terrible. I don't really have anything else to say. Next. At number 6 is Howard the Duck. Oh, God, I remember I saw this movie years ago, and I didn't really remember. I kept on ranting because I thought it was disturbing, and so I had to give it a watch again, and this is a disturbing movie. This movie's so fucked up. It is disturbing. This is a disturbing movie. Like, that scene with Howard and that girl in that scene was so disturbing. This is a disturbing movie. My God, it was actually kind of creepy. It's disturbing. And it has literally one of the dumbest plots, and this is a disturbing movie. My God. And oh my God, there are so many cringy scenes like that. With one scene where when one of the female ducks is in the bath, it's just, my God, that was so cringy. And that scene where the girl and Howard were in that bed, this is a fucked up movie. This is disturbing. This is a disturbing movie. My God. Oh my God. It's just, oh my God, it's so disturbing, and it's just, ugh. But it is hilarious. There's so many scenes that are cringy, but yet I still laugh so hard. And so, yeah. Howard the Duck. Really disturbing movie. My God. At number 5 is Batman and Robin. My God. I ranted a lot about this movie in my very first video. I uploaded my tier rankings of all the Batman movies. My God, I ranted a lot about this movie. My God. Oh my God. And And I'll say it again, this is just, oh my god, this movie is so irritating. Arnold Schwarzenegger's Mr. Freeze was just awful. George Clooney's Batman was terrible. And Alicia Silverstone's Batgirl was just so awful. And Uma Thurman's performance as Poison Ivy was just so terrible. Though, I will say George Clooney's performance as just Bruce Wayne was decent. Same with Alicia Silverstone's just performance as Barbara was decent. Like, without their masks on, like, without their suits on, just, they were fine. But Alicia Silverstone's performance as Batgirl was just trash, and so was George Clooney's performance as Batman. It was awful, and Chris O'Donnell as Robin was just terrible, and just everyone in this movie was awful. It was so irritating. Everything about this movie was irritating, and the suits, my god. The suits are so anatomically correct in every way. They literally show way more than we need to know in this movie. Literally with, like, not even a minute. They show literally, like, the nipples and the butt. It's disturbing. It's like, oh my god. They literally show way more than we need to know in that opening, and just everything about this movie was just awful. It was trash. I could just rant about this movie. It was so awful. But even the director himself apologized for making this movie. The director apologized for making this movie. If you haven't seen it, here it is.
If there's anybody watching this that, let's say, loved Batman Forever and went into Batman and Robin with great anticipation, if I disappointed them in any way, then I really want to apologize, because it wasn't my intention. My intention was just to entertain them.
So, yep, he even apologized. The director himself, Joel Schumacher, apologized for that movie, and yeah, and everything about this movie was just awful. And some of you are probably like thinking, how is it only at number 5? It should be in like number 2 or 1. And I just think these 4 other movies are worse. But this movie is awful. And Batman's suit in this movie was just so wrong. This has to be the worst superhero movie suit. It's awful. And way more than anatomically correct. So, yeah. Everything about this movie, Batman and Robin was just awful. So, worst Batman movie. So, yeah. Batman and Robin, awful movie. At number 4 is Fant Four Stick. Yep, I talked about this movie in the most boring movies I've seen, and this is most definitely one of the worst superhero movies. It's awful, and this movie should have been amazing because the 3 other Fantastic Four movies sucked. The one from the 90s, I actually never saw that movie. I've seen parts of it. It's terrible. It's just so cheesy. I haven't seen it all the way through, but the one from 2005 wasn't very good. Neither was Rise of Silver Surfer. But this movie was just awful. This was like the worst one out of those 3 because I have not seen the first one from the 90s. But this one was just awful. My God, it was just terrible. Oh my God, it was so awful. And it should have been amazing. I mean, it has Miles Teller, Michael B. Jordan. Really, 2 really good actors. I haven't seen a lot of Kate Mara movies nor Jamie Bell movies. But I love those 2 actors. Michael B. Jordan is an awesome actor. So is Miles Teller. And this movie was just awful. And this movie, like, Batman and Robin is hilariously bad. This is more bad. This is just boring. In every way, it was just awful. My God, I know it was trying to be good, but it was terrible. It was trying to be a movie like Batman Begins, but it failed so much. That's why I'm a little worried about the upcoming Fantastic Four movie, because I've not been the biggest fan of Marvel lately, and I haven't been the biggest fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe lately, and I always thought that they could manage to make a good Fantastic Four movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I'm still hoping they could. But honestly, after the way Marvel's been, I'm worried that they could screw up the next Fantastic Four movies for those two reasons. I'm worried that they could make the fifth one in a row to suck, and I'm also worried that that'll be another awful Marvel movie. So yeah, hopefully they prove me wrong. Hopefully it'll be great. Who knows? Hopefully the next one will be like Batman Begins of the Fantastic Four, and then this one will be like Batman and Robin. So, yeah, terrible. This one was awful, so unforgettably awful. And so, yeah, really, really awful. At number 3 is Superman 4: The Quest for Peace. Yeah, this one was just terrible. By far, this one is the effects in this movie are just god-awful. Everything about this movie was just awful. The way Superman flies looks so fake. It was just terrible. My God, it was just... This one's embarrassing. It's so awful. Everything about this movie was just trash. The way Superman flies was just so awful. The villain Nuclear Man was like literally one of the dumbest movie villains. Like, yeah, like the dumbest superhero movie villain by far. One of the dumbest movie villains of all time, period. And just everything about this movie was awful. And it's embarrassing. The effects are they're horrific. They're awful. Literally, they're horrendous. It's terrible. It's embarrassing. This is one of the worst, another fourth installment to a movie that sucks. So, yeah. Superman 4: The Quest for Peace. Really awful movie and the third worst superhero movie. One of the worst movies ever made. At number 2 is Catwoman. Yeah, this is the worst DC movie I've ever seen. The worst one was Superman 4: The Quest for Peace. I mentioned that in my top 10 worst movies I've ever seen. This movie honestly pushed ahead. This is the worst DC movie I've seen. And the second worst superhero movie I've seen. And I said that Superman 4: The Quest for Peace was the second worst superhero movie I've ever seen in my top 10 worst movies I've ever seen. But no, this one's awful. I just saw this movie actually more recently, and it was terrible. And it should have been amazing because Catwoman is one of my favorite Batman. But my 3 favorite Batman villains: the Joker, Catwoman, the Riddler. I'd honestly want to see a standalone Riddler movie. This movie was just awful. It was just terrible. And I honestly, it should have been amazing because it's about Catwoman. It's a standalone Catwoman movie. And they got it all wrong. They didn't even name her Selena Kyle. Her name was Patience Phillips. That's not Catwoman. Her name is Selena Kyle. This movie needs to be remade, and they need to make a good Catwoman movie. Honestly, Warner Brothers, you need to make a good Catwoman movie. And DC, I want to see a good Catwoman movie. And this movie's actually cat shit. It's awful. It's that's what it is. This movie's cat litter. It's terrible. My God, it's awful. I saw this movie recently. Actually, I knew someday I had to watch this movie, and I did. And my God, it was embarrassing. My God, this movie was embarrassing. Halle Berry. Well, I mean, she actually accepted her Razzie, and she accepted it in front of at the Razzie Awards, and this movie actually won for Worst Picture. So yeah, congratulations for winning Worst Picture. All right, and the number 1 worst superhero movie I ever saw was Captain America 1990. I've ranted a lot about this movie. I honestly had a little bit of a debate which movie should be number 1. I was honestly thinking of putting Catwoman at number 1, but Catwoman was actually kind of entertainingly awful. This one actually pissed me off. It was so terrible. It was boring. This is one of the most boring movies I've ever seen. I ranted about this movie in the top 10 worst movies I've ever seen, and in the top 10 most boring movies I've ever seen. And so, my God, this movie was just boring, and it's literally, Captain America's barely even in this movie. This movie, I was expecting some cheesy action sequences watching this movie, and I barely even got any of that stuff. It was more boring romance. This movie was a soap opera. It was totally awful. And so, yeah, I had a hard time choosing which one I should put between Catwoman versus Captain America, and this movie wins easily for worst superhero movie. And so, and this movie honestly makes movies like Batman and Robin or Fantastic look like The Dark Knight in comparison. This movie was just awful. By far the worst superhero movie I've ever seen. And if you guys love Captain America, like say if you've seen all the Avengers movies, then don't watch this movie. It'll ruin your love for Captain America, because this movie, like, the performance was awful. The suit looked terrible. It's just, everything about this movie was just awful. Like, I was expecting, when I saw this movie, I was expecting, like, a Batman and Robin, or, like, those kind of movies. But no, this movie was just extremely boring. And it was more of a soap opera. And I've ranted a lot about this movie. My God, it was just unbearable. My God, it's terrible. Honestly, it's so awful. If you guys love Captain America, just don't watch this movie. Don't watch it. It'll ruin your love for Captain America. It's terrible. Just don't watch it. So yeah, that was my list of the top 10 worst superhero movies I've ever seen. So yeah, in the comment section below, please tell me, did you agree with this list? If not, what's your least favorite superhero movie? Let me know down in the comment section below. Comment below, let me know. And if you haven't seen my top 20 favorite superhero movies, follow the link in the description below. It's there. And so, yeah, let me know down in the comment section below. Comment below, let me know. And let me know what your least favorite superhero movie is. And so, yeah, if you like this, please subscribe to my channel and hit that like. All right, don't forget to subscribe. Bye.